Welcome to MF and Block Podcast, episode 13. Unlucky 13. Unlucky 13. So this week I'm having my boy Branden Meade on, and by day, this man is a badass machinist, right?
Yeah, machinist, process engineer stuff. I
All
make
kinds
things.
of all
Make
kinds of stuff. Find him on Instagram, and you can see all the cool shit he makes at his 9 to 5. And then you can follow him on Facebook for all the fun shit he does that we're actually going to talk about. Music. I met Branden through music, through our mutual friend Corey Bly. Uh,
yeah.
have you talked to him recently?
Yeah, actually, he stopped by today to pick up an amplifier he built for me. He's just servicing it and getting it going again. Um, it's a crazy thing. I don't know how technical we want to get with that stuff, but it's real fun. It's got three. It basically has like it mimics kind of like a Fender sound and a Marshall and a Soldano. So it's like a three completely different amplifiers because I do session work and stuff. It's really cool for that.
Yeah, you've worked with quite a few local and not so local acts, right?
Yeah, I was trying to think about all that kind of stuff today. Some of it's long since passed, but yeah, written a lot of songs, done a lot of just behind the scenes kind of stuff in general.
That's the fun stuff I've found. I'd much rather be the dude behind the curtain because like yourself, I've played a lot of shows, and I mean I know there's people that still get excited show after show after show, uh, but it's at some point, uh, actually, local musician Arlo McKinley has a
Yeah,
song about how it's the same old shit. Like it's another town, but it's the same old shit. Like the pre-show always feels the same. At least to me, it did.
yeah.
And like it kind of became a little bit of a drag to me. But I loved creating. Like the creative process is what I want.
See, I think of them as two different things. I really like the creative part. I like playing and writing a song, and that's like to me that's like in a way a visual artist paints a picture. It's painting, So it's that I'm working that muscle. But
Yeah.
then playing a show is entertaining. So that's to me that's like acting,
Hmm.
and that's a different muscle. And since the plague, I haven't been able to work that muscle at all, and I miss it. I miss it really bad. It bothers me a little bit, honestly, that I don't get to play the big shows and have fun and stand out on the lip of the stage and look at people and smile. That's amazing to me. But
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
that's just how I'm wired, I guess.
So let's just take it all back to the beginning. Um,
Sure.
was it a person or was it an album or was it a song or was it hearing shit on the radio or was it your parents playing records? Like what got you interested in playing music?
Um, my mom's always sang and always encouraged us to, as kids and around the house, and she would sing. Um, she'd sing for church and stuff, and she just has a beautiful voice. But
Yeah.
then when we were at home and it was Saturday and we're cleaning the house and whatever, we're doing what we, just chores or whatever. She's got the radio up and she's blasting some kind of like, usually like 70s rock kind of stuff, and she'd belt it out like just full blast, and it was fun. It was really a cool thing that she did, and that was like early encouragement just to sing. And so I was always in like school choirs and church choirs and whatever, and always messing with it, but never really did anything with it till I was like maybe 11 or 12. And then I was just obsessed with any kind of instrument I could get a hold of, anything. Like if I could find a piano to mess with, I did. I'd just sit
Yeah.
down and play it a little bit just to just screw around with it, and was always interested and begging for a guitar, because that was the cool thing, it was cool to have a guitar, and just loved it. Just always was just obsessed with it. And I don't remember like one specific thing, but I remember several little things that were like pushed me that direction, just
Yeah.
consistently. I had um, there was a guy in school. He was a little bit older than me that he had a fiasco with a school teacher that refused to teach me, so I had to have someone else teach me math for some reason. It was a pretty weird situation, but anyway, point being, I had kind of a national honor student or whatever come from the high school to teach me fifth grade math. and, and so he was the coolest kid. He had the coolest shoes. He drove an IROC Z, and he talked about Led Zeppelin all the time, and he played the guitar. And I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And so there was that. And then a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, Deborah, she gave me a copy of Jimi Hendrix Experience, the first big record, Are You Experienced? And I heard this very subversive psychedelia kind of stuff as a really young teenager, 13 years old or something like that. I just thought that was amazing. And
I think when I was 8 years old, just getting into any kind of psychedelic music,
yeah,
my dad was huge into like my dad's got a very weird like taste in music. He either likes like bluegrass from the 50s
yeah,
or shit like Iron Butterfly.
yeah, yeah.
So he like
Yeah.
literally one of the first records that I listened to cover to cover was Iron Butterfly with Anagata
Nice.
DeVita. And my dad, I was like 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
And he made me listen to that record with headphones. And he's like, "You see how it's going around your head?"
That's great.
But they were experience like for me musically it was experiences like that. Like for me it's record based, but I think it's just because I have a memory around when I heard that record. So like Inagata DeVita would be one for sure. And then in my teenage years, like I had a friend that left Less Than Jake losing streak, a copy of that record at my house. And also being into Nirvana like in that early 90s period too. Even though I've mentioned this to a lot of people, going back on it, like there's one record that Nirvana did that I actually still think is really, really good. But looking back on a whole lot of it, that was just the right time for what they did because
Yeah,
uh
I can agree with
like
that.
just like going back and listening, like first off, Kurt Cobain did a lot of heroin. So it's really hard to perform at your top on heroin.
Right.
And like he wasn't a phenomenal guitar player by any means. And I think Dave Grohl had a lot of those writing credits anyway.
Yeah.
But no, Incesticide's the album that I'll still go back and listen to because there's some cool riffs on that.
Yeah, that is cool.
So what inspires you to keep making music?
To keep
Because you're
making.
obviously dedicated. Like you work on instruments,
Yeah.
like you do all kind. Like I mean, you are fully involved in the hobby that is music. But
Yeah.
what keeps pushing you to keep making stuff?
There's always something different. I can always get better at playing. I can always play something different. Anytime I'm kind of stuck with something, I push myself to learn more chords, usually like jazz stuff, sixes and 11s and whatever.
Yeah, because you're really tapped into like the music theory side of
Yeah.
playing
I,
music as well.
I never really got very good at like sight reading or anything like that. I can't read music really. I mean, I understand it, but I can't like just I can't read it quick. I can't read it quick enough to do anything with it. So
Are you self-taught? Is that
yeah, yeah,
see? I'm the same. Like if I sit and look at it, I can tell you what it says, but
yeah,
I couldn't look at it and play as it's written.
right. I have a tough time with that because it's just I just never had enough practice at it. I wasn't in school band. I went and asked if I could play any kind of stringed instrument. I didn't care what it was. I just wanted to learn how to play a stringed instrument, you know, in a classical way, you know. And they're like, I just don't know anything about that. We can't do anything with that. So I didn't do any of that, but I read as much as I could and took some college courses on music theory and stuff like that, and that's really helped a lot. But I just got so used to doing it, you know. I just sat and did it. Actually, played the guitar is the biggest part of it. I think when I was a kid, probably from the time I was 14 till I was probably able to drive, I think I'd play for at least through the summers. I'd play like 15 hours in a day.
Damn.
Just did that constantly. Was just always playing and learned scales and all that stuff, and took every opportunity I could to play anything at any time. And that was actually kind of cool. Now that I think about it, when I was when I was young, I grew up in Adams County. There's not much there. There's maybe
There's not a whole lot going on there.
in an entire county, there's around 10,000 people. It's a beautiful space. There's a lot of really cool people there, and it's really interesting. But there's not a lot of opportunities to play music, and so I remember a few times going to the local little music shop we had there in West Union called Red Barn. I don't think it's around anymore, but um, it was always some guy from town running it. You know, it changed hands a few times and stuff. But but they'd always have like little bluegrass jams in there, and I wanted to play like punk rock and metal and you know and scream and all that crazy stuff.
The fun stuff.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. But I knew that was the only way that I could play that day is just to sit in and play, you know, basic open chords in a bluegrass band for the day, you know, and I wanted to play that bad that I don't care. I'll strum some chords with you, tell me what they are. And that's what we did for the day. It was fun.
Did you ever get down the can you play the banjo?
I I mess with it. Now that you ask me that, I did a cover of the Jay-Z song. What's the title? Just Want to Love You.
Oh yeah.
I did a cover of that. I learned the riff on the banjo, and then transposed it to a major key. So it's real happy, and just like I just want to love you, be who I am. It's like
So,
real like
dude,
peppy and like happy.
dude, I had a friend of mine like talking about moving that to a major scale. A friend of mine,
Yeah,
he's very talented and definitely into the music theory part of playing music as well. And he
yeah,
actually he took Metallica's Black album and he moved them all like he changed it all to major scales,
yeah.
and he wanted to start a cover band called Major Talica. And but like he played it, and it's so funny because if you take Metallica songs and make it a major instead of that minor scale they're all written in,
Yeah.
it becomes they become a pop punk band.
Oh,
It's exactly what happens there.
that makes
So like when you're sitting in I mean I know you try to play a lot of different types of things just to keep yourself challenged, but when you are writing music, what kind of I mean, like the feeling or genre, like how would you describe what it is that you create? Is there a certain path you end up going, or are you just all over the place?
Um, most of the stuff I write, like if I'm writing for me, if it's my voice that's coming out, um, I try very hard not to be very on the nose about anything. Um, the lyrical structure of stuff is always generally like I'll write a story that's telling the truth, that's wide open, that's saying this is how I feel about something, and then I put it in the context of some kind of other um, more generalized story so other people can relate to it a little better. Um, I have a song that's called it's an older one called Blood, um, that is like a murder ballad. It's talking about this guy um, that he's being arrested, like it's in the process of that, like he's actually being taken in by the police and being caught in the middle of this huge, you know, this huge crime spree that he's gone on. And he doesn't feel bad about that part. What he feels bad about is missing out on his woman. You know, he's not going to see her anymore.
Yeah.
And really that was about um traveling with music and missing my fiance at the time, playing
Yeah,
and
yeah.
being gone all the time and missing her. So that's what that was really about. But then the classic murder ballad, you know, just works to tell that same story, you know. So it's a story from me, but relates on a larger level of this, you know, this mythological concept of the, you know, the murder ballad
Well, I
story.
also feel like in the creative process too, um, at least for the creator, there's something cool about the not necessarily the story being anonymous, but like leaving something to be figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like with some of the projects I've done, like I've played in some punk bands, and then quickly moved into doing hip hop, and I've rapped a couple verses, and there's one verse specifically that I did where if you listen to it, you wouldn't really get much from it. But if you sat down and you actually tried to figure out what it like, there's a lot of deep shit going on there. But just the words that I used and the rhyme scheme that I used, if you just heard it, it just sounded like fun. But you break it down and you're like, oh man, this dude has a lot going on.
Yeah, that's awesome.
If you could collab with one person, alive or dead, the dead part's funner, like more fun for me. But myself, I feel like I listen to I most of the music I listen to was made before the year 2000. Like I try to stay up on things and I try to listen to new music.
Yeah.
Um, but especially pop wise or just mainstream, and that would include Spotify or Apple Music because they definitely charge people to make sure those songs are up in all
Yeah.
the you might know categories. But yeah, who would you collab with?
Um, I do
Or
so
would it be a group? Put a super group together. Who would be your super group?
much
Super
super.
groups super groups are way cooler.
Super groups are way cooler. I don't know. I always really liked off the beaten path type stuff. Let's see. I wrote down a few, I think, earlier. Um, one being I've always been a huge fan of John Schofield. Guy's just amazing. He's probably 70 years old now. Um, but he has this style of playing the guitar, this way of playing the guitar that you absolutely know it's him. And I always thought that had something to do with like the gear he was using and stuff. But I went to see him live and he was using a borrowed guitar amp and just absolutely still sounded absolutely like himself. And I like that, and I strive for that myself a lot. and I would like to put things into the context of someone else's work. I like doing that a lot. That I would be thrilled to do with almost anyone. That's kept me busy for a lot of years, is just being willing to bring my thing into someone else's world, or to work on things for them, like in their context, if they've established a strong voice to say, this is what this needs in addition to that. And that's always been cool for me. So I would do that with literally anyone. But especially if they have that strong voice. But like Schofield, Bela Fleck is another one. He's really cool about doing that kind of stuff, like collaborative stuff. And I always like working for female singers. There's just something about that that pushes me to play in a different way, and people pay attention when it's a girl singer. So
you're not wrong.
No, that's always a huge plus, is that people are paying attention when a girl starts to sing. It's something pretty amazing, and people do really gravitate towards that.
Oh, absolutely.
But to pick out like anybody in particular, there's the classic ones. Of course, I would love to be in the same room with Hendrix. I'd love to have been able to sit down and talk to him. But all the classic ones. But Jimmy Page would be one that I think he's amazing, not because of necessarily the stuff, like, of course, because of the stuff he's written, but not just because of that, because of how he's taken the guitar to someplace else. Like, he's made it.
He's definitely an innovator in the industry, for sure.
That's his only voice. He doesn't sing ever. He doesn't speak even. It's just his guitar, and he's used that to such a impactful way, and done exactly what he wanted to do. Played this weird, whatever you want to call it, like proto metal stuff, and turned it into freaking Stairway to Heaven. That's the thing that came out. That's amazing, and that he could do that and take some weird thing he wanted to do and turn it into something commercially viable like that is amazing.
Only because you bring him up, did you get a chance to listen to the Robert Plant and Alison Krauss album?
Yeah, I love that one.
Dude, that thing is absolutely incredible. Well, her first off, her voice is just ridiculously good. But they did really well together on that. And we can do let's do modern, like, current bands. If you could open for anyone right now, who would it be?
If I thought about this one today, and I think I got a good one. If I was to be able to open an actual show for one of the My Morning Jacket shows at Red Rocks, one of those, that would be that's bucket list worthy right there.
Red Rocks would be the shit. Red Rocks would be awesome.
Yeah, but one of the shows they did there, or any of the ones they'll do in the future once we're done with all this stuff, that would be pretty incredible. Getting open for them would be cool. Getting to open for anybody who can pull in a big crowd.
Big crowds are fun, for sure. Yeah. Well, like, I think right. If I were in like a I kind of like where, like, the country and folk music have kind of gone. Definitely not mainstream country, but a lot of the independent. Like, part of me wishes that I could like mainstream country music, because the people that are into it look like they're having a great time. But like we were talking earlier about writing something so that it can be related to by the masses. Like just for me, like modern country music, it's pushed so far in that direction that the song absolutely ends up meaning literally nothing. But people are like, I can relate to that. I've been through a breakup, you know. And now there are big country musicians that I do respect. Like Brad Paisley can play the shit out of a guitar.
Of course, yeah.
But and then I look at like Dave Matthews Band, for example, not country, but Dave Matthews Band. I'm not going to sit and listen to one of their studio albums, but I have watched some of the live performances, and I kind of watch it just to see how they play. And everyone in that band is absolutely ridiculously talented, but I don't really want to listen to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. You know, you have your own. Everybody has their own personal opinions on that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely. But like if I were in like one of these newer like uh folk alt country bands,
Yeah,
man, Tyler Childers, I would want to open for him in a heartbeat.
that'd
Like
be
because so I
cool.
had met him at
You'd
one
be
of
on the
the
right path if you got to open for him. That's for sure. You'd
yeah.
be you'd be doing the right things.
Well, I had gotten to meet him with no idea he was going to end up being where he's at now, at one of the Whispering Beard music festivals.
Yeah,
And it was long before he was being played on the radio or opening for Sturgill Simpson for a whole tour, you know.
yeah.
But yeah, it would be Tyler Childers, or I really like John Moreland too. I don't know if you've checked him out or not.
I haven't.
Um,
I have to.
he's a very talented just songwriter in general. It's really raw. Like his albums, I mean, when they go into the studio, I mean, it's a full band and it's produced well and it sounds great.
Yeah,
But watching him just play his guitar and sing his heart out, like that dude, he's either had a really shitty life or just a lot of fucking heartbreak. Like
yeah,
uh but he's a really solid musician.
yeah. That's cool. I'll check him out for sure.
So do you so first off, shower beers, yay or nay?
Absolutely, yeah.
What about singing? And what is it that you sing in the shower? I know you love those acoustics.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I have this. I I'll sing usually like whatever's on my mind, like whatever. I had that. It was a Taylor Swift song on some little clip some friend of mine sent me. That was just hilarious little clip. I'll send it to you later. But anyway, it was just a Taylor Swift song, so that's what I sang in the shower today. And that's just, that to me is just bubblegum pop, whatever. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not that interesting to me, but it's
So I
just
was
a
listening
catchy
to the new Miley Cyrus record today.
Oh, yeah.
Uh I sang some of that when I got in the shower after work today. So that happened.
I have
If
this.
it if you weren't playing music, or if I mean over the course of the last bunch of years, if it wasn't music that you were doing, what would it have been? Like if music wasn't in your life, what do you think it would have been that you ended up falling into? Would it have been trouble? Would you fallen into trouble? Or what would it have been? Like what would it have been?
As far as trouble goes, I was never. I was pretty straight laced kind of kid, always ornery, real ornery, but never like never much on anything in a legal sort of sense, um, except for like speeding. I love cars. I'm crazy about cars, and I like going fast, and that's really all the trouble I've ever gotten in. But
You an American guy or an import guy?
well, my daily driver is definitely an import, but actually, it's all really imports. I like British vintage stuff. Jags and all that. I've got a little Austin Healey that I'm working on now in the garage,
Oh,
but
nice,
uh,
nice.
it's pretty fun. I'm putting a V6 in it. And it'll be rowdy and fun. But but as far as like what I would have done had I not had music, I probably honestly would have just gone to college for engineering. I I ended up working my way into that anyway. It's kind of it just suits me, just what I'm kind of good at.
But you like to tinker and take shit apart and fix it
Yeah,
and
and fix stuff and design things, and there's I get all kinds of that opportunity at work. I work for a company that deals in aerospace and regular space and medical field and biomedics kind of stuff and
when I've
all
seen a
those.
lot of the stuff that I've seen a lot of the stuff that you make at work. And so, and the one question I do have about because some of the things that you make, I'm just like, what the, like, like, how do you even figure out how to do that? And, like, is some of that you figuring it out yourself, or is that all like you following schematics?
Now a lot of it's kind of R&D work, so they'll come and say, hey, we need this to do this thing, and I have to design it from scratch, and I'll just have a bunch of iterations out on paper that I'm going through, like figuring out how it can do all these different movements or hold these components in the proper manner or whatever. Be just generic about it, but have to draw a lot, just draw out blueprint after blueprint and try things and stuff, and then go to a machine and make it whatever. Usually it's a one-off piece. There's a certain series of parts I'm making now for a company that's in the news a lot because they like to leave Earth.
Yep, yeah.
Occasionally, I think you know what I'm talking about,
Yep.
and get to design some stuff for them, which is really cool. And working on a big project for them now, but it's all just I started out, I went to trade school and just started there. I went and got a job just pushing a button, and then wondered why I was pushing the button, and figured it out more and more and more from there. Just kept going, and I always kept a day job, even when my band was traveling and stuff. I would just have I got really lucky for a while. I had a 410 schedule, so
Oh, that's perfect.
right. So Thursday at 5 o'clock, I would go meet the bus somewhere in some parking lot, and I would lock my car, and I would have a bag, and I'd get on the bus, and I'd come back Sunday night, and I'd get my car, and I'd go back to work on Monday morning, and just constant, just doing that all the time. And that era, I was probably playing 70 shows a year, I would think, something like that.
What's
It was a
your
lot.
favorite venue you played at while you've been on the road?
Um,
Or is it local? Is one of the local spots one of your favorite?
my favorite local venue, um, not always necessarily to play there, but my favorite local venue has got to be Motor. It's just great. They do such a
As
good
someone that goes to shows, I also love Motor because their shows are always free.
Yeah, it's free for one, and you can't get a better show than that for free because they always have cool bands. They always have whoever the newest, brightest star is. They've always got them, and when they run a really professional show, the band's always comfortable playing. They're always happy to be there. The the crowd's big enough to be interesting, and lively and all that stuff. It's a great spot. I love it. Um, as far as my favorite place across the board, like from way back until now, there was a place in Hillsboro we used to play a lot. Uh, It was called the Colony Theater. Did you ever go out there for anything?
I've I've heard of it, but I never played there.
So this is an older place, and I got to know the sound guy and all kinds of stuff, and we had a great time out there. Capacity was like, I think capacity was like 700.
Those are those fun crowds.
Yeah,
Those venues are fun.
that was a great crowd size, and it was a big crowd. And the thing was, the sound guy had retired from doing sound for Journey on the road, out on the road. So he had all this professional gear that he packed into this old movie theater, and he had, side fills and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if you ever got an opportunity to play a stage with side fills.
Oh yeah.
It's absolutely incredible. The sound is so great, and this was just in this little, just in Hillsboro, Ohio, and we had a blast there, and they always treated us well and stuff. So that was a cool place. That was a kind of a bright spot out there, but that was a long time ago. um,
Well, so I know you're like every time I've been around you and any interaction we've had has always been pretty positive. I know you probably don't want to shit on any individual venue, especially locally,
yeah.
but least favorite. And you don't even have to name a name. If you just have a story on why a venue was your least favorite, unless you want to throw a name out there, I can tag them on Instagram.
So I won't say a name, but there are, um, but I'll go quite a bit broader than that. Anybody that is hosting ticketed shows where the band has to sell tickets, that's that's a no deal. That's not.
I just talked about that on my last episode. I had Maria Corelli
Yeah,
on,
Maria. Yeah.
and she well, I had brought it up to her about like the last band I was really in. It was right in the middle of that transition,
Yeah.
and there's one promoter specifically locally, and he knows that I don't like him, and
Oh,
and
yeah.
like it's well aware. And yeah, but it was the story I said on the last episode. Like, we opened up for a guy that had the #1 song in the country, and we were being asked to sell pre-sale tickets, and I was like, no, dude. And then he's like, well, you get like a 5% cut, and I'm like, yeah, but no. Like, we used to get a 50% or a 30% cut on the door or whatever the hell it was, plus our merch.
Sure.
And like, in that transition, that band that I was in, we went from literally probably making about 2,000 a night when we were playing
Mhm.
to making like 600. And he wonders why I don't like him.
Yeah.
Life.
Yep. It's how it goes. That there's a venue that's always been about that. Um, there was a venue that we would come up and play. I was in a I was in a like melodic death metal band for a long time. That was my thing in the day. But um, I came up here to play. It was a place I believe in Silverton, and a little
I
venue.
know what I've been there. I know it's on the side street. It's
Mhm.
on the side street off of what's the main street that goes through there?
I don't recall.
But it's all, I know what you're talking about. I think I saw Terror. There used to be a band Terror, but there's a new Terror, I think. It's not the same group. I think it was a local band that I'd seen at the time, but it was a wild night. But I know the venue you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we played there. There was 6 people in the band, and the promoter brought us 4 single-dollar bills at the end of the night, and we had played a show. Like, we're a professional level band. We played a show, and he brought me $4 bills for 6 guys who were in a tour bus. That's what he paid me for playing that show. So we never played any more shows for him at all.
You You remember the band? You remember the band Green Jello?
Yeah.
So the lead singer's got a very weird last name, or maybe it's a fake last name. I don't know. But and either way, there was they actually ended up well, he ended up going viral in this video. They played a show in Canada, and my buddy's like a hype man vocalist, sings along on some of the songs with them now when they do tour.
Mhm.
Uh, but he had told me the story because he was there, but a promoter straight like disappeared before the show was over. And then they had reached out on Instagram to all their followers, and they were like, yo, this promoter stiffed us, does anyone know where he lives? And they got his address within like 20 minutes, right? So
Yeah.
the next morning, they didn't go there that night. At least they waited until the next morning. But like they went there the next morning, and because Green Jello had that the Three Little Pigs song or
Yeah.
whatever. So he's literally like slamming on the door, and he's like, bitch boy, let me in. and, uh, and he's just like yelling at the dude. But apparently the promoter ran off and to spend the money on drugs, and um, somehow they ended up getting the dude out of his apartment and got him in their van, and they were driving this dude around to any of his friends' houses that would let him borrow money to pay pay the ban. Like Green Jello was not leaving town without their money, and for that I
I
give them
couldn't. They probably
massive
couldn't,
prop.
to be totally honest. They
Oh,
probably
you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I
yeah.
mean, Green Jello's played recently. They've played well before COVID. They were playing a lot of festivals and stuff, which still the payout on festivals isn't probably nearly as great as what people think. But at least you're getting something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that video, I'll send you a link for that because it's not short. It's a long video.
I get a kick for sure.
Uh, so how do you think the internet has changed what music used to be? Is it a positive thing or a negative thing?
There's a lot.
I know how I feel about it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
what do you think? Was it a good thing? Napster, was that a good thing?
Napster definitely not, uh, but it was there's some good in it, but there's some bad too. The things that I saw was coming up through a time where your MySpace made a big difference, and people were doing things to make themselves seem like they had their stuff together.
Mhm.
There's a band in our little circle that I can't even say there was a band. There was several bands in our little circle that made themselves seem like they were doing mega stuff, like that they had their stuff together and they were ready to be a touring professional act. And they were the furthest thing from that. There's a band that's honestly they're still very popular, very famous band. Um I won't name, of course, but their their first bassist literally couldn't play the instrument at all. Not at all. He had no idea how to play. And so they would turn his instrument down, and he would mime parts on stage because that's how far behind they were. But their MySpace got him a record deal, and they went toured the world, and the man could not play the
Wow.
instrument at all. And there will be people who know who I'm talking about just from that description. But I hope it's vague enough to not get me in trouble with anybody. But anyway, there was a lot of that happened. People got all this, just the same thing as like you were talking about with Nirvana. They ushered in all this like fervor and like focus on Seattle bands, and bands got these huge recording contracts and got advances of 6 and 7 figures
Yeah.
for nothing. They never produced anything worth that kind of money at all. And the same thing happened because of MySpace in particular. towards the end there was bands being thrown 6 and 7 figure deals that could not justify it, at
Well, I
all.
feel like too, like right at that time, like the internet is the reason that MTV is the reason MTV started to fail, but the internet definitely helped.
Yeah.
But I feel like there were a lot of record executives that were just grabbing for straws in hopes that they could find something that would blow one video up on MTV, and I mean, a lot of the hype of like trying to find the new next thing, I think, was involved in a lot of that.
Yeah. And that's where the internet, the internet's not real. It's a it's an illusion of something, but it's not actually tangible. And you would go,
It's the environment you want to create, which can get
yeah,
scary.
yeah, it's not actually there. So in this early days of, bands functioning on social media and stuff, there was a lot of that happened. There was a lot of, on the other end of it, people were starting to be taken advantage of more and more and more. And actually today was the day that the Spotify lists all came out, and a bunch of people posted them, and I can understand that's fun. It's fun to do, and fun to talk about what, your top artist was and all that kind of stuff. But that's a prime example of something the internet has taken advantage of. I have friends that are in a massively popular band. They had something like, I think it was 212 million plays last year, which is mega. I mean,
That's
that's
big.
congratulations to them. That's amazing. Just on Spotify too. And so I was thinking about it because a friend of mine had mentioned today, like that Spotify's taking advantage of artists right now. I mean, that's what
Oh, really bad. They hardly pay shit to the bands.
and so I did the figures on that, and that means that the people in the band it's a trio. The band is the trio for the year for their music that they've gotten streamed to that extreme degree. Like they've gotten really far to be streamed at that level, because a regional touring act is only breaking like maybe breaking into 6 figures a little bit, maybe 100,000 plays or something like that in a year. These guys are 212 million, which is insane. And the three guys are splitting 12 grand for the year off that.
Jesus.
That's not that's not even fair. You can't tell me that's fair.
Well, and what's crazy too is and that's not the only story of I mean, actually, so my buddy Arlo,
Yeah.
he shared on his story that he had like 13 million plays this year.
Uh-huh.
He's not getting anything for that. You know what I mean? Like, but then, so you have that negative side of it, but then if you look at the positive side, like Chance the Rapper won a Grammy without ever releasing an album. Like he just put his songs well, he put his album on SoundCloud, but
Sure.
like he never sold anything. He never released a physical copy of anything. Like it didn't go through distribution
Right.
at all. And then you have this, like you have someone who didn't know their life could be any bigger than what it was, and he puts his shit on SoundCloud. Next thing you know, he's got a Grammy.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy. Like I said, it's pros and cons. You're gonna have the pros and cons there. It just sucks because those negative stories. I almost kind of feel like the negative stories outweigh the couple diamonds that were found.
Yeah, sure.
Because how many thousands of these negative stories are there compared to the handful
It's
of
a
those
it's an industry that eats just
positive?
like every other industry, but it's not a it's not as based in something tangible as, say, for that matter, as like the mechanical stuff I do, the engineering and manufacturing things. I can make something and I can sell my time for that, and I'm just given a rate for that, you know, and somebody understands what that means to hire me to do that job, but they don't understand the intangibles of seeking inspiration to write a song, you know, of sitting with a song forever to come up with 3 minutes of material takes everyone hours. It's hours invested into, and you know this, you write things. It's, you have to have an inspiration first, which takes hours to get. You then have to have a story to tell somebody else, and then you have to write that down. You have to refine that over whatever shows and having a producer work on it with you and all these things. It takes hours and hours to get all that done and to get a song actually marketable to where you can show it to somebody and it's something worth listening to. You know, that takes forever. And to get something back for that is tough. It's really tough to do that. And I think a lot of people have issues with that and how it's done, you know, how the business around it is conducted. Because, you know, it's like hitting the lottery sometimes.
And like the beats, when I was making there was a point, there was a Beats McGreevy. But yeah, that like when I was doing beats, there were a lot of people that just, maybe it was because we were friends, or and to be honest, making beats is a lot easier, at least for me, than writing a whole song, because I'm just creating a backbone there. But
it's part of a songwriting process, the beat.
Yeah. And so I'm creating the environment for them, and I wasn't even like, when I first started, I wasn't like, I was literally like, yo, give me $20 for this beat. And which, to be honest, they were probably getting a $20 beat for $20.
Well, at first maybe, I don't know.
But no, it got to where I was making a little bit of money on them. But people just wanted them for free, because for them, like, they didn't know the behind the scenes. They didn't know how hard I was digging. They didn't know that I sampled six different songs from 6 different artists from 6 different records to create this one thing. And like, dude, one time I took a Third Eye Blind sample, and I took a Suicide Machines bass line, changed a couple notes so that it would fit the progression. But like, I took a Suicide Machines bass line and put it on a Third Eye Blind sample, and then like handed it over. And like, they didn't even know what they were listening to because it was something new. But I'm like, no, literally, that's Third Eye Blind, and like, that's a pop band with a ska band. And, but people would want it for free all the time. But like, everyone just wanted that stuff for free, and it's not free. It's hard to, it's a weird line to walk, of knowing what you're worth and trying to get what you think that worth is.
Yeah. It's one of those interesting things you have to learn kind of as you go, because I mean, there's no like set path to be a musician. There's not like oh, hey, you just go to college and this happens, and go talk to this person and it'll work itself out. It's not like that. It's just random. And one of the coolest things I ever had happen to me is that the son of a major record producer liked the metal band I was in. And so he would do stuff for us, like unofficially. Like he would let us come, you know, record in his, or like do final mixes in his recording studio, and borrow gear from him. You know, we had one of those for a recording session. We had one of those Silver Jubilee Marshalls, amp head. It doesn't matter, but it's just this piece of gear that nobody can afford to have, that he would just like let us borrow this kind of crazy stuff. And he would make calls for us and put us in touch with the right people on some things. And that was just random. I mean, that was totally random.
It's crazy. It's crazy what like the connections that you can make, like through who likes your stuff.
Yeah.
And do you know Ryan Rockwell? Have you ever met him?
Oh yeah. I
Okay.
I worked on the mixtapes record.
Okay. So he was telling me when the mixtapes there was one show they had in California at some point, and so Billy Joe Armstrong of Green Day, his son was a huge fan of mixtapes, and whenever they played on the West Coast, he would always come to their shows. And one of the shows, um, I guess, and this is just Ryan being classic Ryan, in the middle of his show, like even if Ryan's got a hotel room or a place to stay, like he's still gonna ask the crowd if any of them will let the band stay with them.
Yeah. Just for the
And
stories later or whatever. Yeah.
oh yeah, so like this particular show, they literally didn't have a place to stay, or they didn't have anything lined up ahead of time. So he asked the audience, just asked the crowd, like, "Hey, can we anybody let us stay with him tonight?" So Billy Joe Armstrong's son walks up and goes, "Hey, you guys can stay at my house." And like I think Ryan said it, even at the time he was still unaware of who this kid was. He thought like he was just a cool kid and he was gonna let him stay at his house. So uh and he stays the night at Billy Joe Armstrong's house. Like, it's just like that's a Ryan story. Like that's what would happen. Like Ryan either pulls in like the strangest of strange or the coolest of cool. It's a very weird. He's a very weird person to hang out with. So what would, if you could change anything about the music industry, um, what would it be?
I think just the way money works in it, the way it the way it functions. It's like you were saying with country songs, they end up not meaning anything because that's in particular country music that's a machine that absolutely like it's designed to produce hits because country music makes more money than anything like
Mm-hmm.
any other kind of music. It used to be, I don't know if this is still true, but at one point, I think when I was still uh, taking some music courses in college, but someone told that more money is generated on country music, American country music, than every other genre combined, than everything, than the entire rock and roll music industry, than the entire hip hop, everything. It's all uh, overshadowed by country music, every bit of it. And that was just amazing to me that that's possible. But it's still kind of the case, even if the numbers are different now, it's still this juggernaut. I mean, it's still massive. And
Well,
they
you
do.
look at like Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football, and those aren't both of those opened with country artists now.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, it's a big deal. And
the halftime show will be hip hop, but
right,
we're gonna open it with country.
yeah, the but country radio, if you turn it on, it sounds like I made the joke the other day at work. I was like, this sounds exactly like 90s R&B. If these songs were being sold in the 90s, Boys to Men would have bought them.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's who would be singing them, not whoever, not these
When
country
that's a side of music I don't think a whole lot of
kind of
people
odd.
get.
But
Like just that whole side of like people don't, unless you've been in music and around a bit of the industry.
yeah,
um People there's record pools and there's these songs, like everyone writes songs and records these songs and then they get dumped into record pools. Exactly. And these songs get dumped into these record pools, and then producers, songwriters, whoever it is, that these labels that are pulling through these, they'll just pick songs out. And like for example, Rascal Flatts, before they signed a country music deal, they were actually a pop rock band,
yeah,
and they weren't making it and they couldn't get signed and no one wanted anything to do with them. They literally took the same songs that they already had and just recorded them singing a little twangy on it, and they ruined my life as a highway. And but but you know, like they like a lot of people don't like people are unaware that Rascal Flatts wasn't a country band, and then they just move a little south and sing with a little bit of a different sound, and then boom. Now and they really weren't country. Like if you listen to those songs, like that's not none of those were traditional country chord progressions or
Right.
anything like that. It just had like how you step in and add what you know how to do to other people's projects. Like that's what they did. They took what they had and then added a little country to it.
Yeah, turned it into something marketable, which I
They
mean,
blew up. They
more power to
blew up.
them because they've got wonderful careers. But um,
You think without the movie Cars, because didn't they have the song in Cars? Without Cars, do you think they would be where they're at today?
idea. That's hilarious.
So what's your favorite song? So this is a two-parter. If you're sitting around your home and
Mhm.
you're gonna play something, um, also when you're performing any groups you've performed with, what's your favorite song to play at home, and what's your favorite song that you've performed with a band?
Um, I think necessarily I listen to lots of music. Like I listen to things kind of on an academic level a lot of times. Like I'm studying all the different whatever. It doesn't. I don't even necessarily like it all. I just have to listen to it. And so the stuff I play at home is a lot of times for that, just to have that constantly going, like to be thinking about what the next project is, or what the next, to be pulling inspiration from what I'm listening to. I do that a lot. Um, but then, so that would be anything. I don't know. I do end up listening to lots of jazz. I end up listening to lots of, in the car, I listen to lots of metal. I'm going fast anyway, and it kind of fits. But anyway, it's hard to say. There's one that question made me think of this particular. There's a particular riff on Third Stone from the Sun, the off that Are You Experienced Hendrix record, and the main riff in there. I think he actually plays it all the way through without singing or anything like that over it, about like a minute 50. He plays this one riff, and I try to sneak it into every solo that I can, like some portion of it, because it just means so much to me. Like just this one little blip, of a thing. It's maybe 20 seconds long. I just try to fit it in anywhere I can. So like during a live show, my guitar solos aren't always the same, and I'll sneak it in or something somewhere along the way. Any kind of like open jam I have, it'll inevitably come up. I'll play it somewhere. Um, so that that song stands out to me. Like it's always just in my mind. I'm always thinking about that one little piece. Um, but I don't have stuff I go back to a lot. I really don't have that much stuff that I'm like going and listening to a classic record or something. I just don't do that very often because I listen to lots of stuff. I'm just constantly listening to something new, something different, whatever. And
Well, if you would have posted your Spotify top songs, I would have seen how many minutes you've listened to this year.
right, yeah. Uh, um, I do have one record that I can think of that I play a lot, um, and it's not a very popular one. It kind of got panned a little bit, but I think it's aged pretty well. Radiohead's "Hail to the Thief."
That's a good one.
I love that. I love every moment on that record. It's beautiful.
I'm a big fan of Radiohead in general, but that's a
Um,
good record.
yeah, I love it. I think I've owned. I think I had 5 physical copies of it. plus whatever I've downloaded of it. It's just amazing to me. And yeah, I've ruined CDs of it when that was a thing, because that was the original format for that record. So it came out, I had like three or four of those, and would just play it so often that those was get messed up, and I'd have to buy another one of the same record. And I have it on double LP, and yeah, it's one I listen to a lot. But that's a rarity for me, like to listen to things over and over. But that one's one that I
So with
was.
Hendrix and obviously Page, like who else do you view, because they're kind of not necessarily hero, but people that you would look up to musically
Right.
for what they've done. Who else would you add to that list?
I think I mentioned Schofield for sure. He was amazing. He played for Miles Davis for quite a while. Um, Ani DeFranco.
Oh yeah.
I'm a huge Ani DeFranco fan. She's incredible as a guitarist, as a business person. She's incredible. Um, just all across the board. That's an amazing person, and she's really done a lot. She'd be up there for sure for me, especially because of the acoustic thing. I kind of split my time between, um, like if I'm doing session work and stuff, it's generally because of the electric guitar, but if I'm writing, it's an acoustic. A lot of times I'll sit with an acoustic guitar a lot of times and write and play. My next project after this plague we're going through, is going to be like focused on being a festival band, like and me in the center playing acoustic guitar and singing folk songs, but have a big production around it. That's
like a Willie Nelson kind of thing.
not quite that country, but yeah.
Well, just as far as like he's just being him, being like he's
Right.
playing simple progressions. His
Yeah.
vocal melodies aren't anything out of this world. He's got a good story always, but
Mhm.
it's always something simple. But what's going on around Willie Nelson, especially like within the last 20 years for sure,
Yeah.
his band, like when they play, it's just thick. Like
Yeah.
it's just big.
So I want to do as big a band as I can afford to do, because all that stuff costs money. But yeah, that's the next thing is to play folk songs, and to put on as big a production as possible and play long shows and go that route. um, I think that's kind of the next focal point for me once we're done with all this stuff, is to go that direction and play all my folky songs and stand in the middle with a acoustic guitar and have a bunch of great session people around me. Basically, that's kind of the next thing I plan to do.
So you're obviously a handy guy, and like you seem to be pretty methodical with a lot of everything that you do.
Overthinker, I think is what it's called.
What's your most useless talent?
um I can like, I don't even know if the video will pick it up, but I can wiggle my ears.
Oh, I see it.
I can wiggle my nose like a bunny.
Oh, that's crazy.
And let's see, the other useless one is I can whistle without seeming like I'm whistling.
Oh, no way. That's ridiculous.
It's just useless, but yeah.
So I feel like I've saved the most important question for the last, of course.
Yeah.
And this went in because I mean, I kind of know, I mean, we know a lot of the same mutual people, and we know some really good dudes. We know some guys that are very introspective and people that do pay attention and aren't afraid to voice how they feel about things. But what's the best piece of advice that anyone's ever given you?
I think that I think that like there was just a general understanding people would talk about um, the deals you get offered a lot, which was really helpful. Um, I've never actually signed any contract for anything ever, really, um, other than signing on with a band to play for whatever, a contractual rate or whatever. Um, I've done that quite a bit, but really like never letting anybody have anything of mine. Keeping my own copyrights, all that good stuff, and nothing ever really is what it is seems to be. None
Mm.
of those. You know, we both know people who've had indie record deals and maybe some small, some lower level majors and stuff like that. And those deals just never are what they seem to be.
A lot of
And
empty promises.
yeah, you have to have something worth marketing at that level. You have to be there before that's useful to you. And then it's really not even that useful in a lot of cases. Um, some bands that we both know would have done better to have foregone all that stuff, to have just pushed on their own, you know, done their own marketing and all that stuff and hired their own people to do that stuff for them. And I think that saved me really a lot of heartache. Probably like not taking that stuff, taking some opportunities. I've definitely been open to a lot of stuff, but you know the particularly like the indie label stuff is kind of a dead end in a lot of ways, and people have warned me against that and coached me on that, and how to be um, wary of what you sign on for in music. It's important to protect yourself that in that way.
And most of those contracts that people sign, they end up getting screwed anyway. Like,
I mean, and there's some where things work out right, but we're talking about a band who has, they've already got a manager that's already doing the work for them in a good way. They're already making money to live on. They're already doing these things that they should be doing. They're already getting all this stuff done, and then they sign a deal for distribution or whatever, and
yeah.
that's where it works out well. That's the positive stories you find.
Well,
Where
if you look into, if you like, say, if you look at hip hop, like Wiz Khalifa, for example, he made it, like he had already made $1 million before he signed his first record deal. Like he was doing, and it's crazy because,
and that's a deal that works. That's something that makes sense for
and
him
he
to
never,
sign.
like he didn't even need it. Like you said, by the time you do it, it's not even needed. It's more of like a, well, here's an accolade, you earned it, you know.
Yeah, or they're doing something specific for you. The specific one, that the person that actually stood up and said what they were doing, was like Bright Eyes, Connor Oberst. He said he's not signing a deal. He doesn't want one. He owns the record label. He makes money on that. He funds his own projects. Everything's all taken care of. He doesn't need anything except for to get that little bit of distribution. So he finally, eventually, worked it out where he had a contract from his record label that he owned to work on distribution with Sony. And that's amazing. that he pulled that off, but it's one of those deals where catch 22, like he didn't really need it, but it helped, sure.
Well, and
But
having it put that way too. So with one of like Wiz Khalifa's one of his first big songs, that everyone, especially everyone around this area, knew it. That Black and Yellow song that he did, because he's from Pittsburgh, so he did that. And for anyone that doesn't know, the Cincinnati Bengals have this fictitious rivalry with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and
so
and well, they had that, and so of course a lot of people knew that song and like hated it because he was just talking about black and yellow. But I can see what you're saying, because after he signed his deal, that's when he started doing songs with like Snoop Dogg and like these legends that have been around forever. And that especially with hip hop, like if you get to do a track with Snoop, you made it. Congratulations.
absolutely, yeah. There's something to be said for it, and there's deals worth signing, of course, because people sign them and they work out and they're wonderful. But then going back to what we were talking about with Radiohead is an incredible band. They've been without a record deal for 12 years or something. I can't remember how long, but a long time. They've been just completely without. They don't. There's nothing that they need from them anymore. They go
You know
back.
what is crazy though is when you look at bands like that, especially with Radiohead, like when they did have a deal,
Mhm.
they were plastered all over the place.
Yeah.
And now that they like, for example, I had no idea that the Smashing Pumpkins had a new record out.
Yeah.
I came across it today. I kind of like it. I'm gonna have to go through it again to try to absorb it. I listened to it at work today, but it's things like that. Like I'm sure they probably did that on their own. I mean, I'd have to look into it, but it would make sense that Smashing Pumpkins put that out themselves and what have you there. But yeah, like back in the 90s when the Smashing Pumpkins were signed and they wanted them to be the next big rock band, they were everywhere. So I definitely see what you're saying there on a distribution level for sure.
There's good and bad to all of it, I guess.
Well, I want to thank you for being on. This was a good conversation, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
No problem. And of course, I'll tag you when it's all up for sure.
Excellent. All right.
Have a good night, my man.
Thanks. You too.